Welcome to Decades of Horror, the 1970s.
Dead? Not dead. Look at me. Look at me. I'm the one who's dead. All safe and dead. All safe and dead.
This is episode 140, recorded May 20th, 2021.
Gruesome Magazine.
I am your host, Jeff Mohr, and this podcast is about horror films released between 1970 and 1979. Each episode, my co-host Chad Hunt, Bill Mulligan, Doc Rotten, and I will tackle another classic or not so classic film from this wondrous, groovy, gory, and influential decade. Unfortunately, I'm not taking over the hosting duties. Doc
or
Rotten
fortunately, however you want to look at it.
Fortunately, I am not taking over the hosting duties. Doc Rotten could not be with us tonight, and he asked if I would pretend like I was doing his job, and
He's
said,
boiling
sure.
macaroni.
I can pretend. So, standing in for Doc or me, I don't know, depends how you look at it, is the awesome and stupendous and likable as hell, Daphne. How you doing, Daphne?
I'm doing great. I'm super excited to talk with you guys.
That's her, by the way.
Yeah.
It's not Bill. That's
Thanks for
Daphne.
joining us on such short notice. I appreciate that.
I love it.
Also with us is Chad Hunt, comic book artist, co-host Decades Before the Classic Era and Decades Before the 1970s. Chad, how are you?
How do you think I'm doing? I'm freaking awesome. That's how I'm doing.
You always are. You always are.
I was angry and ornery and before the show started, but now I'm really stoked for some odd reason.
It just feels good.
Yeah, it does. It does. So happy to
Sometimes,
be
yeah.
here with you guys.
And last
Maybe
but
that.
not least is Bill Mulligan, writer, director, special effects guru, and co-host of Decades Before the 1970s, and all-around nice guy. How you doing, Bill?
Doing okay. Finishing up school and getting ready for what looks like a very, very busy summer.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, on this podcast, we're going to start with some basic details of the film we are covering, followed by each of our first impressions of the film, and then some general, I don't know.
Discussion.
I guess discussion. Yeah, that would be the word.
Which may or may not have to do with the film.
Yes, hopefully it will have something to do with the film. So, our film this episode is The Haunting of Julia.
Hey, I can read. That says Full Circle.
It does, also known as Full Circle. And that actually, that poster, I just put it up because it was the only one I could find that wasn't like the ones that you gave me images of. And it was the other name. So
I also want to say that is a truly terrible poster. Like they said, hey, where's the poster? You got to do it in an hour, and you just like this is what you come up with.
It looks like a tomato soup can label.
Well, and it kind of looks like there's some
it.
like coffee cup stains on there too.
Come take your place.
Is that the Campbell's logo? Is that
Dare.
what you're saying?
Anyway, it's bad.
Yeah, it's definitely not good.
All right. This film is directed by Richard Loncraine. Written.
That guy.
The screenplay is Dave Humphreys from an adaptation by Harry Bromley Davenport, originally from Peter Straub's novel Julia, which was released in 1975. Cast includes Mia Farrow, Keir Dullea, Tom Conti, Jill Bennett, and Kathleen Nesbitt. This is a UK-Canada joint production, and the production companies are listed as a Canadian Film Development Corporation, Classic Film Industries, Famous Players, Feder Productions, and Merit. Seems like a lot. Filming locations are basically in and around London, Kensington, Bloomsbury, Wembley. Filming date, they began filming in November 1976. Now, this is where it gets a little weird, and we seem to be on a string of these. You know, in the 80s, we did a couple, and now we're doing this one. The actual release date is 1977 in Spain at the San Sebastian Film Festival, And then in May of 78, it was released in Canada and the UK. It did not see a release in the US until May and September 1981. And there's a little bit of a story behind that. Apparently they just decided not to release it. I don't know. And then somebody was looking for unreleased films that they thought were worthy of release, and this was one they found. Budget was 1.1 million in Canadian dollars. And the synopsis: after her daughter's death, wealthy American homemaker Julia Lofting moves to London to restart her life. All seems well until she is haunted by the ghost of other children while mourning for her own. So there. And
I reckon there's something to be said about that.
Yeah, we're going to say it. So here's the other posters I've seen. Also not the greatest, in my opinion.
No, but at least there's some art there, a little old-fashioned. But this whole movie seems a little old-fashioned, actually.
Well, yes, it does. Yes, it does. I actually kind of like the top one. The bottom one seems to, I don't know.
It looks like a good cover of a book.
Yeah, it does look like a book cover.
Yeah, but that wasn't the cover of the book.
No,
so
it wasn't.
So anyway.
Anything's better than that Photoshop mock-up they had on the title page.
It kind of reminds me of, though I know it's not the book cover, but it does remind me of like mass market paperbacks.
Remember
of
those
that
back
time.
in the day?
Right.
And I
Those
have,
are great.
Right.
and I like that. So that's kind of a little nostalgic for me. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, the paperbacks from hell.
Yeah. No, I pulled out my mass market paperback, and because it's been so long since I read the book, I couldn't remember how if it ended that way or if that was similar or not. So, well, I guess this is my pick. So, and well, I guess should we do this or not?
Did we have any
There's
good
one
tag
tagline.
phrases? One tagline?
There's one line. Well, I felt bad for Chad after we did Frankenstein, which had 25 taglines.
Oh,
There were more than 25.
So I made sure to pick a movie that only had one.
Oh,
Fire
thanks.
one ready.
She had no one to play with for 30 years, darling. Could you
You'd be
pass the
grouchy, too.
sugar?
You'd be
That's the
grouchy
marmalade.
too, right?
That was good.
Slow down. You're eating
30
too
years. Did I tell you? 30 years.
Yeah.
30
All
whole
right.
years.
So I picked this film, and
Yes, you did.
there's a reason
Just
I picked it is I'm a big
skip
fan.
talking about it. Just give us the apology, right?
Yeah.
Aw.
Oh, I'm not apologizing.
You better apologize.
I liked it. I'm a big Peter Straub fan, and this was his first.
You bought Night of the Lepus on Blu-ray.
Okay, this is not Night of the Lepus.
You have no credibility here.
Oh, Jeff is feeling personally attacked right now.
That's because I am.
Just kidding, Jeff. Go ahead.
So
It's more than a feeling.
Peter Straub. That was his first. Julia was his first novel in the supernatural vein, and that's kind of where he landed from then on. And not his best book by my judgment at all, but it's really kind of it has that sort of gothic surreal feel, and I think that's what this movie has too. I mean, there's so many weird little things, and I'm with you guys. The first time I saw this, I was kind of like, well, something happened, I want something to happen. But this time around, I was more into the whole gothic atmosphere and the sort of the surreal feeling of what was going on. At least that's the way I took it, because there's a lot of stuff going on, just like a lot of ghost stories or possessions, there's things going on that could be accidents. Maybe they're not accidents. Maybe they are caused by a ghost. And I like it has that thing that a lot of films have where she's searching, she's trying to figure out what's going on, and she finds out a little piece of information and she's following the leads. And I enjoyed that. I think Mia Farrow does a good job, although she's kind of, I don't mean this derogatorily, but she's kind of playing Mia Farrow. You know, she's playing this part that's been good for her. Good to her, let's say that way. Sort of the meek, timid, caring person. So yeah, I liked it, and I thought that last, the last like maybe 20 minutes from the time when she goes to see the one guy, I can't think of what his name was, the guy that
Winters.
Well, Winter, but the next guy, Swift, was played by Robin Gamble. When he goes to see him, and from then on, it really ramped up and started feeling really creepy. And maybe even from the time when Magnus gives it. Yeah. So, but I kept looking for more. I kept thinking, what's the point of having all these mirrors in this house? Mm-hmm. And we never see anything in the mirrors. You know, I would have expected some, I don't know.
Yeah.
Some stuff in the background, you know, but anyway, I still enjoyed it, and I got goosebumps at the end, and especially when she goes to meet Mrs. Rudge at the hospital, or the what did they call it where she was staying? A home. She lives in a home.
The nervous hospital.
Wow, talk about disturbing conversation. Anyway, with that, I will pass, and I'm going to go with, I just don't like to choose anymore, so I just pick the next one.
Jeez. God, don't scare me like that. Okay, so, yeah, this is a slow burn, and I did enjoy the last 15, 20 minutes and everything, but it's a long time to get there. But, you know, it's really well made. The cinematography is great. The composition is good. It's very widescreen, and they use the space very, very well. But this movie reminded me a lot, superficially, of Don't Look Now, where we have the death of a child very early on, and the parents are pretty messed up about it. And one of them starts having visions where she thinks she's seeing the dead daughter, and she searches for it, and ultimately leads to destruction. So it's a bit familiar to me, except Don't Look Now is a flippin' visual masterpiece that, you know, nothing, very few films could match that, and certainly not this one. But it's got some cool things. It just takes a very long time, and by the time they got to the very dark deal, when we realize who this child is and what this child was, it kind of comes right out of the blue, and that's interesting. But before then, just a lot of people falling downstairs and tripping on wires and getting electrocuted, you know, but nothing. I don't know. I feel like they either should have gone totally with It's All in Her Mind, or let us in on the supernatural is real earlier, and you know, sort of gone all the way, because it's like, it feels like 4/5 of a movie where we're not really sure if there's anything supernatural or not, and then all of a sudden, boom, it is. But an interesting little one. I do feel kind of like I would like it better the second time I watch it, but that's going to be a while from now. I don't feel compelled. You know, I mean, some movies I watch and I literally could watch them again the next day. No, and I don't think my wife would let me watch this one again the next day. She was kind of waiting for something to happen too. But I do think there is a lot to appreciate. And it's a film I'd never heard of, I don't believe. And researching it, looking up, there's a lot of folks on the internet who have a real love for this movie because it is so obscure. It just, nobody talks about it. Nobody writes about it. It's hard to find photos of it. It's got a great cast, but it just slipped through the cracks. It's just it's an 80s movie that looks like a late 60s movie. Mm-hmm. And sort of feels like it too. I can see why it kind of sat on the shelf for a while. But I enjoyed it. I'm glad we got to watch it because I don't think I would have watched it otherwise. So.
Well, I was, it popped up on something, and I don't know if it was earlier this year or if it was a year ago. Doc pointed it out to me, and I watched it, and then I was sort of like, I have a feeling Bill and Chad are not going to like this one. So I'll hold off a little bit.
They're a bunch of Neanderthals. not enough decapitations for Bill.
Yeah, kind of. Not enough asphalt land for Chad.
Wow.
I'm crossing our decades of horror thing. So Daphne, what did you think of this film?
Well, this was no, I hadn't even heard of it. It's the first time I saw it. I saw it a couple of nights ago, and I hear what you guys are saying, and it's making me think a little bit about that. But I really enjoyed watching it. I got sucked into it, and well, the thing with Mia Farrow that I like Mia Farrow, and you're absolutely right. This is kind of like the Mia Farrow role. I love Rosemary's Baby. It's like way up there on my list of one of my favorite movies. And the thing about Mia Farrow that has always drawn me to her is that she's very delicate looking, and you want to project on her this delicateness that isn't really there once you start getting to know the character. It was like that on Rosemary's Baby. And here I just remember that I was really surprised that she left her husband, and she just like knew that was what she wanted to do. And she just kind of left and to do her kind of grieving and mourning on her own. And so I noticed that again. And I liked I need to watch another Keir Dullea movie. I need to rewatch maybe 2001, because to me, this is just him. It's like he in Black. I'm thinking of what is it? Black Friday, the Christmas,
Black
Black
Christmas.
Sunday, Black Christmas, right? I mean, it was very similar character, but he's so good at playing that role. I mean, just he makes me so mad, and he plays it so well, and the kind of patriarch that he is type thing. But so I enjoyed that, and I loved her friend. It definitely felt very much like late 70s to me, which I really liked. It was a little gritty. Like we talked about, there wasn't tons of pretty people. And you're right. It is kind of like a little bit of like something we've seen before, where is it supernatural? Is it not? Is she doing this? Is she not? But I kind of went with it. So I think I liked it. I enjoyed it. I was telling people at work about it, and they're all getting them to watch it too. And I really want to go back and read some Straub after this too. It did remind me very much of Rosemary's Baby, but I don't know if that's just because it was Mia Farrow or if it was just a story of a woman kind of trying to solve this mystery, kind of on her own. And then
tells her she's crazy.
Right. And then, but when you were talking about the kind of dark part about what this girl was, this ghost, I shouldn't have been surprised that it went there because of when the movie was made. But I still am a little bit startled when I watch movies from the 70s and I realize how just easy it was to go to this dark place sometimes. And I kind of appreciated that in a way, like they went there to this girl. And so it creeped me out a little bit. I don't know if it scared me, but it kind of creeped me out a little.
Okay. I appreciate that. Mr. Chad.
This is the first time I have seen this movie. I've heard about it for a long time, but never.
Oh, okay.
I've never watched it. Mostly because I was afraid it wouldn't live up to Rosemary's Baby. You know, as a younger guy, you hear about these movies. I love Rosemary's Baby. I think it's a great film. And watching it now, I feel like I was right. It's not as good, but I shouldn't compare the two.
Sure.
It's one of those movies, and Full Circle is a more apt title because it had just an extremely tense beginning, and then the last 10-15 minutes was another tense film. So it did come full circle. It's just in between there was just nothing going on, and I feel like it could have went into more detail about the little girl and the nature of her evil. You know, why she would be like that, and the relationship that was sort of growing between Mia Farrow's character and this Olivia, because it was obvious to me that, you know, her, after her losing her daughter, she was looking to, like, and she even said, I want to save her. I want to help her. You know, why? You know, why would you want to help her? But then you realize that the loss of her own daughter and her being there in that house alone and having that feeling of wanting this child or trying to help this child, and that motherly instinct of hers like kicking in for this ghost child. I thought that was a way more interesting thing they should have delved into a little bit more, and they did not. And I'm not going to say this is a bad movie, because it's not a bad movie at all. It's beautifully shot, and the characters are just amazing, especially Mrs. Flood. You know, the lady that did the seance in the house or whatever. I just found her kind of interesting. She was just this quirky little old lady that knows all about how ghosts work, you know.
That's such a stock character that we've run into a few times with these English films. The kooky psychic who does seances, and that's always seems to be a fun character.
Yeah, and she was fun, and she could have, even with her character, after she was traumatized, she could have went. I felt like they could have went into why a little bit more and gave her a little bit more information, you know, earlier on in the film than she actually did. And but I would say the last 15, 20 minutes of this movie is worth the price of admission. That's one of the best ending scenes of a movie, I think, that I've ever seen. That she finally said was embracing this evil child who ended up killing her, basically, at the end. And who knows? I like to think she did. I like to think she did, because she underestimated how really evil this child was.
Because the other interpretation could be that she kills herself out of guilt. And that, I think, is something that's missing. And I was talking to Jeff before we started, that apparently, supposedly there's a missing scene from the beginning where, when her own daughter is choking to death, it's implied that she's going to do this, but we don't really see. She gives the daughter like an emergency tracheectomy. And I believe, I just have to infer this, I think she killed her kid. I think the child died from loss of blood. Probably would have died anyway, but that's this guilt that she's carrying around with her, that she killed this child, which makes her kind of the mirror image of the other mother that we run into here. And, you know, so what is why does the ending end the way it is? Is it this is the full circle, the guilt, you know, that she killed her child this way and she dies in a similar way? Is it the ghost child getting vengeance on a mother who killed her own child, although in this case not intentionally? Don't know. There's a lot left ambiguous,
which makes it so good. That's what makes it so good. It's sort of left up to your own interpretation of it, of what happened. And I was making fun at first of this, you know, oh, this movie sucks, but it's not. It really does not suck. It's just there's just very long sequences of people walking around and people very little dialogue between those scenes. But I think it just could have been a little more cohesive in the story part of it, because I found the story very, very compelling and very interesting. So, but anyway.
Yeah, listening to you guys talk about those things, it does. I mean, I enjoyed the not really knowing what was going on and got a lot out of that. But listening to you guys talk about kind of other ways they could have gone with it to tell the story, it really had a lot of potential that as I can understand that criticism of it, that it really could have been more than it is just because the story is so good. And I was wondering about the tracheotomy scene, but I was just thinking more about like it explaining a little bit about why she was reacting so strongly. But you're right, the guilt from that completely kind of doesn't completely, but it adds a whole nother layer of guilt that may or be causing her to either go insane or not. I mean, just you guys are absolutely right. It had so much potential.
That may have been in the film, but
she couldn't save her own child. So
Right.
she was bound and determined to save this evil child and turn this child around. And who knows if she did or not. You know?
Right.
Yeah, and as Bill and I were talking earlier, I looked, like usually if there's some scene that's cut that's available on some version, you can find it somewhere. I found I could find nothing. I found tons of versions on YouTube and a lot of other, video services, and all of them were the same cut. So I'm assuming, because it says missing the graphic tracheotomy scene, and what we saw was not graphic, right? We saw her.
Well, it was very heavily implied, though.
Right.
I mean, she was handed the knife, and she
right.
It didn't really show.
And then later we see her with blood, and she's in shock on her. But it's so I don't know if that's. They could have cut out the whole piece with the knife and her with the blood on her and just never explained that, or maybe there was some more graphic scene. Because if you look at the rest of the movie, it's not all that graphic until the final scene. Then it's very explicit. So, I enjoyed that too. And for me, the movie feels like a circa 1900 ghost story. Something has the feel of like the turn of the screw or something like that. And
ghost story.
I kind of think that's what Straub was going for. And like they always do in books, they change some stuff. Because I went back and looked at the book and just tried to look at, at the end to see if I could figure out exactly what happened. And the biggest thing I saw different was Magnus didn't die. And I don't know what was going on. He was with his sister and they were having discussions and something about like, it's good she wrote that letter or that note. So I don't know. I don't, she didn't die the way she did in the movie, but I really liked the way that happened.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
But I was kind of looking, from our point of view, after watching movies like The Conjuring and that, that universe, we see so many more opportunities for some really scary stuff, but I don't think that's, probably not what they were going for, apparently.
And that's a good point too. I mean, because it might just be a different way of telling that story. It just seemed like it had so many other interesting things about it that I would want to know more about if I was reading it or watching it. I love I actually like the slow pace of it. I sometimes I like that, and I felt like it was good for this story, but that's a good point too. You're used to other stuff, and so it kind of is a little bit hard to step back sometimes. I think
there's a reason why this sat on the shelf for so many years, and it wasn't because the studio thought they were going to make a lot of money on it. But I mean, this is the artist's vision, and followed it through. I mean, it is an interesting piece of work, but it was never going to be it was never going to pull in crowds.
Well, it's interesting. I think. Let me double check this before I shoot my mouth off and say something. But I think didn't Ghost Story, the movie, come out in 1980?
Fred Astaire?
Yeah, which is from a Peter Straub book. So that's what I'm getting at is a successful horror movie from Peter Straub. Maybe they saw it.
Right. And that movie's not it's not Indiana Jones, but it's got some cool monsters and some scares in it as it's telling a pretty slow story, but Ghost Story was a kind of a fun ride. I wonder if this got released to cash in.
Came out in 81. That came out in 81 as well. So I don't know that date on it because IMDb moved everything, so I don't know where it is.
Ooh.
Not that I'm complaining about it or anything.
Just angry.
Or mad. Release date was December 18th. So this actually came out quite a bit later. But, it's, in my view, Ghost Story was a little bit more of a hubbub. I don't know. It had, just the book itself had a lot of buzz around it. Stephen King.
Well, it was a bigger budget film. You had Dick Smith on the makeup effects, and this film is a little more intimate and a little more. It's a smaller film, and so they had to tell their story in a certain way, but I don't know. It seemed like there was just so many static scenes.
Getting back to the pace, there's not a lot of action, but there's a lot that goes on. I mean, Magnus is conspiring, to get her out of that house, apparently because of money. She has money, and he and his sister need money to help them live. Did you guys get that?
Yeah.
And then we find out about then we have the seance, and then we find out about, and she thinks it's a little girl, and then we find out about the little boy and these people beating him up and killing him, and she goes and visits that mother, and then
we should have seen the little boy. So there's a cool movie right there where the husband is trying to, drive her nuts, send her back to the nervous hospital so he has control of her money. So he's staging these things, but it turns out there's really something going on. I mean, you could, that's a little hokey, but you could have told that story. There were a lot of things going on, but they weren't really followed through.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I thought there was a point where I thought that, when Lily, Magnus's sister, calls her to have the seance at her house, and Magnus is sitting there listening to the conversation, I was wondering if this wasn't a setup, and then when this Mrs. Flood has this crazy reaction, is that supposed to drive her, over the edge or get her all frantic and worked up, and I don't know. I don't think so. It turned out that it seemed like it was pretty darn real, but there was a few of those little, I don't know, red herrings. But then they find out about the little boy and how the other kids killed him, and then she goes and she scouts them out, finds the two remaining ones after she talks to the little boy's mother, and so there's a lot going on, but it's going on very quietly. Like even when she has a fight with Mark, it isn't really a fight. He's trying to talk her out of pursuing it any farther, and she just goes, "I'm going to get out here," and she just gets out and walks to the library. But it's like we don't know what's. It's sort of anticlimactic, I guess. There wasn't Anyway, I enjoyed it, and I was, in the end, I was fine with the pace once it all unraveled, and I kind of like the way that she was pulling at the threads. I sort of like stuff like that, but there was a lot more opportunity. But whether or not that's a fault of the filmmaker or that was intentional, I think it was intentional because it feels. Even the music. What did you guys think of the music?
I hated the music.
Did you?
Yeah, I hated it.
A little goes a long way, that music box kind of thing. But I thought that was okay. I thought that was fairly effective.
Hated it.
What did you hate about it, Chad? What did you hate about it?
I don't know. It just felt like every time I would hear it, it just, I don't know. It just irked me for some reason because it would have been different if that little ding, 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 that little music box theme would have only played when the ghost was active or something like that, sort of as a theme for the ghost. But it was played almost through the whole movie. So every time I was hearing it, it was mentally, which I'm easy to confuse. It was confusing a little bit because I don't know. I just felt like it was a nice piece of music, but just not used like it could have been, I guess. That makes
I
sense.
didn't like the really sweet, syrupy, happy scene music of a certain tone just really rubs me the wrong way. So the opening music when everything is supposedly happy in their house before the choking, that hit me wrong. But later on, I kind of felt like, and I'm asking Bill this, I felt like there was some hints. I'm not saying it was up to par, but there was some hints that reminded me a little bit of some Italian horror soundtracks.
Yeah, me too. I felt that way too.
Which is a curious thing to have in this film. It's a puzzling film in that it doesn't. I don't know what the tone is. It's a hard film to describe, and just feels like it came out at a weird time. It could not possibly compete with other horror movies of that era. This maybe late 60s, early 70s, but this just really feels. I cannot imagine 80s horror fans flocking to see this movie and giving it good.
Fighting with Friday the 13th and Humanoid to the Deep and Screamers.
You know, I mean, even Hammer, when Hammer was starting to fade out, I mean, they were still throwing a lot of stuff that people liked against the wall and all, but this seems very much kind of a gothic, understated mystery kind of thing long after those were popular.
What did you think of the music?
Daphne, yeah.
I'll switch them down.
I know. I already said, yeah. I don't know what to say.
You know, I didn't really have a strong feeling either way. I did notice that it was pretty. It felt dated, even in the story. I can see that it being like the gothic feel to it. It didn't bother me that much, but it just felt a little over the top, maybe, or something. But it didn't really distract me. It didn't really distract me that much.
Well, it felt like a lot of the 70s movies, the lower budget movies, kind of suffer from that, where you can't afford somebody to do the music for you, so you use generic kind of a music, and that's kind of what it felt like. It felt like the music wasn't particularly scored for the film. It's like they, you know, and that's a lot of 70s films, so I can't really fault it for that. But there was just that one little piece of music that felt like it was from a music box. That just felt like they could have been better used when the ghost scenes were happening and the activity was happening for the ghost. If it played then, you know, and I agree with you, Jeff. There's some of that sweet sappy stuff that just turns my stomach, but that's a 70s film, you know. It doesn't particularly feel appropriate for what's going on, you know, at the time. Well,
this guy, the composer is I lost Colin Towns, and he also did Puppet Masters, the one with Donald Sutherland and Keith David, but even more so, Vampire's Kiss, Rawhead Rex. This was his first film.
Really? Oh.
So, just an interesting side note. But in terms of the Italian feel, I felt like that very final scene where she's sitting in the chair and that camera does the real slow revolution around the chair and then come out. And then, I mean, literally, this thing spent the whole movie like hiding, you know, the nasty bits from us. And then in the end, we see her with her throat slit and blood running down her throat, sitting in that chair through the entire credit roll.
That was
a little hard.
That was something else.
That was a choice.
Yeah, that was something else. I mean, I loved it. I absolutely loved it, but I would not have predicted that at all with it. And it reminds me of something that you've mentioned a couple of times, Bill, about how I really actually thought that was beautiful. The black in the background, the color of the chair, the fabric of the chair, the way it spins around, the the pumping of the blood, the long, I mean, it was really, can't think of the right word, but it I don't know, it's maybe cinematic or something about it was really beautiful.
Very, very artistic.
Yeah.
I mean, it was. That could have been a
very
painting
artistic.
right there.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
and that's interesting choice. Probably was a little shocking for those few who went to see it.
Speaking of that scene,
I mean, really, that looks like if take the blood away, okay, and that could
like
be
she's napping,
like a painting that you see hanging in a museum. You know, Margaret reclining in a chair.
Right. Yeah.
It's, you know, it's quite beautiful. And Farrow does have that quality, that little fragile bird quality that, but a little of that can go a long way too. It was great in Rosemary's Baby. And this is, again, this does have, you know, she's able to show that maternal instinct and that, you know, that fighting for your child and everything. But I think anyone who went to see this probably was thinking Rosemary's Baby during a lot of it. And, you know, you can't compete with that.
Yeah.
Even when I was telling friends about it at work, my friend was like, "It sounds like Rosemary's Baby." You know, it's like, yeah, it definitely feels like Rosemary's Baby, and I don't know if that's just her, but it's part of that character as well, for sure.
Well, I thought of Don't Look Now too, Bill. I thought, well, when's the creepy little person going to run out from around the corner?
But both of those characters, Donald Sutherland's character and Rosemary, were given a lot more to work with in their film, you know, and a lot more to fight against or mysteries to solve. And this is a very psychological kind of thriller that in the end sort of, I mean, you know, I figured out it had to be supernatural pretty early on, because how many times can everyone she comes across all this run of bad luck? This is the day they fall down the stairs, trip on some glass, drop a radio in their bathtub. But then I started asking, so why is this happening now? Why is this malevolent child suddenly coming from beyond the grave to kill people, not all of which really have anything to do with her?
I felt like the child wanted her for herself. Didn't want to share her with the boyfriend, the brother, anybody like that. So because her own mother killed her, so I'm assuming that.
So I feel
we
needed some sense that Julia had awoken the spirit or brought her back from wherever she was for that reason. And I think it would have been, and maybe this is pretty heavily implied in the ending, but the idea that this horrible little child is doing this so that she does have someone to be with at the end and everything. That's probably pretty heavily implied, but I think maybe we deserved a little bit more at that point. Because otherwise, like, why? What happened here? But I thought that ending was really, really well done. That we didn't see. We heard the sound, ching, and then it slowly reveals what's happened to her. I mean, that's very understated, but it's also very cool.
I know you have. Yeah, so here's, and that's the kind of, boy, and I'm with Bill. I was looking for images on this film too, and it's the whole film is such a sort of soft focus that all of the images, and I don't think there's a Blu-ray or anything. So
no, people have been begging for a Blu-ray for this. Like I said, its fan base is very small but very passionate. These two shots kind of reminded me of Mario Bava's Kill Baby Kill. The ghostly little girl with the ball and everything. I mean, that's a cool image. And this sort of like goes against when we find out what this child is and what she was capable of. It's very interesting that when we finally see her, she's just an innocent looking little girl. But I guess that was her thing, right?
Yeah.
When the one character said to look at her, you wouldn't know what she was.
Yeah, one of the most chilling scenes I thought was when Julia goes to see totally brain dead on these names. Mrs. The girl's mother in the asylum or the home. And Julia's finally like going, you know, she doesn't say this, but it's like, you're freaking me out, I'm leaving. And she turns around and walks away, and at the last minute she turns back and looks at her, and you see the little girl's face.
Girl's eyes,
and wow, that was chilling. I thought.
Mhm.
I don't know. I was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Got-
Like
got
Chad said,
goosebumps.
that's when the movie really picks up. That
Yeah.
from that scene on.
If
Well,
we'd had
this-
more scenes like that in the movie,
Well-
I mean, you little girl. I mean, they explained everything this little girl did to the little boy
Mhm.
in the park in pretty
Mhm.
graphic detail.
Mhm.
But this girl, it also mentioned that she held power over all her friends.
Yeah.
Why?
Mhm.
You know, why did she?
Mhm.
You know, I can see a ghost having supernatural powers and able to do that kind of thing after they become a ghost, but this girl held some kind of weird
Yeah.
power beforehand. And
It's just
never really
evil.
explained.
Now I don't know about
Yeah.
the timing of this, but I recall that there were some famous cases. I'm thinking of one in particular in England. I don't know if that was 70s or 80s, where some children were killed, and it turned out they were killed by other children. I
Right.
know in particular one where two boys led a little 5-year-old, away. Their last scene holding hands with them, walking away, and they murdered him in cold blood.
I remember
I
that
think that
too,
was
yeah.
such a
Well, and I think
horrifying.
they don't get into this, but I think as when you have a Machiavellian psychopath, that it's amazing what they can get other people to go along with.
Yeah.
That are weak personalities and looking for something to. I mean, look at Manson. Look at there's a lot of cases like that
Yeah.
where
Well,
Yeah.
there's probably
those people
nothing.
would have never done anything like that if they'd have never met him.
There's nothing more dangerous than a child with an adult's psychopathy. With a level of mental insanity that a child shouldn't even be capable of having because they don't have the context. When that happens, and thank God it doesn't happen often, but when it happens, it's horrible because they're among other children who by their nature are completely helpless to this.
Mhm.
And we teach them, watch out for that creepy guy in the van and watch out for grownups and everything. But we don't teach them, watch out for some kid who's just born broken or evil or whatever you want to think they are. That's horrible things happen when something like that because they're wolves among the sheep. And that's a really terrifying concept here that comes very late in this movie.
And the consequences of that, you can see two totally different outlooks from what was the guy's name? Winters,
Right.
and then what was the
other guy was Swift.
How that's affected both of those guys. One is in complete denial that it ever happened,
Right.
and one is completely consumed by it
Mhm.
in the worst way
Mhm.
possible. And so even touching on that I thought was a pretty profound point in the movie.
I forget what the little boy's mother says, the blind German woman, but she says something like, there's only 2 left. All the rest have died, and none of them were a success, or something like that.
Right.
They all.
Mhm.
It ruined their lives. Ruined their lives. Yeah.
Sure.
I really would have.
Enough.
I wouldn't have minded seeing more about the boy's mom because she was just really interesting. And then she kind of said a couple things about her caretaker or her assistant, almost like they were watching this. They knew everything they were watching, and it was almost like they're handing it off to her. But that's one thing. It was I did get a little I do have to admit I got a little confused about what was going on. I was like, okay, the boy lived there, but he didn't. Did he live there or not there? And when did she live there? And who's the mom? And that kind of stuff. And once I kind of figured that out, then I could get on. But there was so many cool characters that it's just, now I'm just thinking that there was a lot more potential here, even though I did enjoy the movie a lot. Like I loved the mom. I loved the blind German lady and her assistant, and they were like in 5 minutes of the movie.
Right.
I mean, I do respect when an artist wants to tell the story their way and all that, but then, like you're saying, the lost potential. I mean, it's a cool story. A woman who's lost a child, who thinks that her child is trying to contact her and is pursuing that, only to discover that no, it is a child, but it's a malevolent child that has nothing to do with hers, and she's being led into a trap. I mean, that's a cool story.
Yeah.
And it's sort of there, but we have to dig it out ourselves. And maybe that's what the creators wanted. But you know, call me a troglodyte, but I'd rather have an entertaining movie that does some of the heavy lifting for me.
Well, I have to say,
Just
I didn't feel any, like there was any intention that we necessarily understand what was happening. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you feel like, okay, and you can do that without being really obvious about it, but you can tell that, you know, you want to, and I didn't feel like that was a intention. It was just like, it could be this, it could be that, you know, we'll leave it there, and which is not a bad thing, but it's not, it's kind of unusual, I guess is what I'm trying to.
It's not as compelling. I mean, we would also like the character better and feel worse about what happens to her. I mean, I didn't really feel that much at what happened. It's one of those films you look at and you can admire for various things, but I was not really absorbed into the story or the characters, and so I just didn't care as much what happened to them. And it's too bad, because I think the actors that they had and the basic characters that they portrayed, that could have been done. You know, this could have been a really compelling movie.
So I kept popping this up there by accident. My thumb was twitching, or my finger was twitching.
That's some moody stuff there. That's really well.
Yeah, I like you put that center picture up there, because in that scene, that's a really interesting scene, because the two of them are there, and then that other person passes them, and they all end up walking away in three different directions from the center, almost like synchronized. It looks really interesting. Plus, then there's the statue there.
A cool statue. It seems like a really well composed.
And then Mia Farrow or Julia walks off into the. Yeah.
I don't know if there's supposed to be some symbolism there that I'm missing, that this statue might mean something. Like maybe that's a famous statue that everyone in England is like, aha. You know,
I don't know.
I didn't get that moment.
Well, I liked the scene when Magnus breaks into the house, and then at one point he's upstairs. I think he's in her room, but that little, you know, everybody knows the monkey with the clanging cymbals and his teeth go, you know.
Terrifying
the clown. I hadn't seen this before. That sucker was when Magnus is in there, and that thing clanks once or twice, and then the head bobs up and down, and it ends up looking right at him. That was another somewhat chilling scene for me, the way they zeroed in on that, because it really looked at me like that thing was looking at him, that doll.
Yeah. By the way, you buy this toy like that for your kid, you deserve whatever happens to you. You ever hear of Slinkies or something? Come on, what are you doing?
That's what I said at the very beginning when the twirl around and your throat was cut. I went, "That's what you get. You don't buy toys like that and expect to just get away scot-free."
Bag of glass.
I was just thinking bag of glass.
Bag of glass. Yeah.
Bag of glass. Yeah.
So we've talked a bunch about Keir
Dullea Gone Tomorrow.
He was, from the very first scene he was in, I think it's almost sort of, maybe it's not genius writing, maybe I'm just easily manipulated, but as soon as his daughter starts choking while he's trying to tell Julia what he wants her to do that day, all the stuff she's supposed to do, he's like, be quiet, straighten up.
What is wrong
You're like,
with you?
Okay, I hate you for the rest of the
What's wrong with you? How dare you choke during my breakfast? I'm grossed out. Yeah.
Daddy's train of thought is getting lost now. Yeah, he's a cold fish.
Yeah.
Hold on, I'm gonna call the police or somebody.
Yeah.
Just get your finger down her throat till I get him on the line.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, we know him best from 2001.
Yeah,
he goes to almost everybody that he knows, that she knows, to try to manipulate her to leave the house.
Open her pod bay doors.
Yeah. And you can tell as soon as he walks in the room, and I forget the character's name, Conti. No one's happy when this guy shows up. No. It's like, you know.
Well, then he says stuff. Even the sister Lily, when they have the seance, she gets this Mark aside and says, "This is Magnus's sister." She gets him aside and says, "You know, Julia's very fragile right now, and I really don't want you harming her. And he kind of looks and goes, yeah, he says something about like having a seance in her house wouldn't help.
Oh yeah,
I mean, it is exactly what he says, but it's
right. Oh yeah. Hey, listen, when one of my friends is having some mental issues, I just break out the Ouija board because that always ends well.
That always helps.
Yeah.
And speaking of him, he did a good job at that. And he played the edge. He played it nicely. You know that he obviously had feelings for Julia, but he was being, at least from what I saw, he was being principled about it.
Right, Dr. Friendzone here. That's a great shot in the middle too.
Listen,
I'm a sucker for mirrors. You know, mirrors are just like the most visual thing ever. The more things you can do with them, the better. That's just a cool little shot and you look at her there, and she has feelings for him too. I mean, that's the look. You may not have ever seen this, guys, but that's the look a woman gives you when she's interested. You know, when she's happy to see you.
Did you catch that, Chad?
She's laughing.
Well,
you may not have ever seen this because that's what a woman gives you. She's interested.
Just saying, you know. Should you ever
I
see
used to
that
go
look?
around in high school holding mirrors up to women's faces, going, "You making the face?"
Well, when he goes up with that,
I was socially awkward.
Yeah.
I was wanting to see the rest of that mirror because I thought, geez, the top of it looks kind of like a coffin. But they never showed the rest of it, so I think they would have. Okay.
If that fails, just play the piano like the top picture.
You're two options.
You're in like Clint. Yeah.
Guitar is better, but because the guitar you can carry with you to the party and sit on the stairs and I gave my love a cherry that had no.
Yes.
Okay, you do that. But a piano, you gotta lug it. You need
up his guitar.
You need a couple of wingmen to carry the piano up the stairs with you.
That's why I never went to a party in high school unless I would always ask you, "Is there a piano there?"
Should I bring my accordion? Because that's the chick magnet right there.
Well, and those little 80s keyboards that
the Diva.
doesn't do the same. It's not the same. Not the same as a grand piano.
Yeah.
Just reach into your pocket, whip out a recorder. That's always good. Yeah.
2 drops of water and it'll expand to its original size.
Yeah.
The woman that we were talking about that was the mother of the evil ghost is played by Kathleen Nesbitt. And at the time that this was shot, I believe she was, when was it shot? 76?
Yeah.
She would have been 88.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah, that surprises me too.
87 or 88.
Jeez.
What? She could remember. I mean, I would think, not being an actor, but I would think that nonsensical lines would be hard to remember because what she was saying didn't make sense in a normal conversation. You know, it's although anyway.
She did really good. I mean, when she went from just like once she knew what Julie was asking her, and it just like a switch went off, and she portrayed that really, really well, I thought.
And I thought she was great.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she was excellent.
Nice teeth.
Never have taken her for that age though. Never.
No, I wouldn't have either.
Well, she was in Family Plot.
Huh?
Oh.
The Hitchcock movie, not too long before that. But I hate seeing stuff like this. Like she was in French Connection too. She played the old lady. That was her title. But I guess we gotta.
Yeah. There comes a certain point in your career where the phone's not going to ring with an offer to play John's prom date. It's time to move on. But she was
great. And that scene kind of makes the movie. That scene puts everything in a far more serious world or feeling.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I mean. We're talking about recommending it or not. It's like, no, look, if I was talking to most of the young people I have as students, no, I'm not going to recommend this because it'd be a waste of their time. But for those, older who are able to sit back and enjoy something and don't need an earthquake in the first 5 minutes or so, or if you're in the mood for something like that,
this so needed an earthquake.
Yeah. There's a good payoff. You just have to be patient with it and appreciate the good qualities and everything. And there should be room for movies like that, but there isn't anymore. Movies cost too much money, and they're expensive to go see. So everything has to be big. And you wonder, I mean, for one thing, it's a loss of variety, but it's also, is that sustainable? That the only kind of films that bring people in and keep the business going are huge blockbusters where every time we've got to be bigger and bigger and up the ante
and have to include everything so everybody will like it. This has to have action in it because we want that audience, and this has to have superheroes in it because we want that audience,
and everybody's quippy because comedy sells.
But we say this on Classic Era a lot, that this is a quintessential 70s supernatural movie. It's and you have to look at these movies and we say this all the time, through the eyes of the era in which they were made, and that's hard to do if you didn't grow up in that.
That's a good point. Yeah.
But so this is one where, like Bill said, I don't know if you could really get a younger person who's used to Thanos snapping his fingers and the whole world explodes, and to hey, did that cup just fall off the cupboard back there? It's a whole different animal, and so and there are, I'm sure anybody listening to this podcast, is going to know what I'm talking about when I say that. So it's just a different thing. It's just a different thing that you have to kind of know what these movies are, and even though you might not like them or whatever, but you still know what they're about. You know what they're about. So.
You're right. It's a very 70s supernatural movie. It's a very 70s British supernatural. If they had taken the same story and it would have been an interesting experiment. Take the same story and have the Italians do a version and a French version and a Spanish version from that era. You would have had some very different movies.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did we lose?
I think we did.
Are we on our own, leaderless, a rudderless ship?
I was here, and the last 5 minutes were all digital gibberish to me.
That's just me
talking. And then you guys all started swirling, and that's a good sign. It's me.
We were just saying, man, I'm glad Jeff's gone. That's it.
Yeah.
I just want to say for anyone out there, digital gibberish would be a great name for a band.
Yeah. I'm sure there probably is a band named Digital Gibberish.
Well,
I think we should probably wrap up here. Are we? When we started, I wasn't sure we were going to have much to say.
Me too. I thought we were going to be done in 30 minutes, but as usual, I'm wrong.
So that's it for this episode. But every 2 weeks, we'll be focusing on a specific film released between 1970 and 1979. Next up, we have one chosen by Bill.
Smokey and the Bandit.
Now there's a horror flick.
There's one, yeah. A truck full of Coors Light.
A Diablo sandwich and a Dr. Pepper.
Yeah. A little film that I haven't seen in a long time, and I hope it holds up. But I remember a great cast, great premise. The Boys from Brazil. And when it comes to it's not supernatural. It's a little sci-fi, but I think it fits because it's got the greatest monster, the greatest real monster of all time.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen it, I guess we're going to spoil a whole lot of stuff.
And it's one of many. When you think about books that are turned into movies, somebody with a great track record is Ira Levin.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Rosemary's Baby, Stepford Wives, Boys from Brazil.
And I've never seen from Brazil.
Oh, you haven't?
Either.
I think you're in for a treat.
Gregory Peck, Laurence Olivier. Yeah.
I mean, it would be the best cast of any movie we've ever reviewed, arguably. And I think Ira Levin.
Besides Street Trash, no, that was 80s.
Sure, you always got the feeling like when he wrote his books, he was thinking this is going to be a great movie, because they are very cinematic. They tell a good story. They've got compelling characters. Just
even
good stuff.
Did you ever see A Kiss Before Dying, the original one?
Long time ago, yeah.
No, but I've lived it.
With Robert Wagner, that's a great one too.
Did we want to mention before we go? Did we talk about our partnership with the channel, the Sci-Fi Channel?
Well, okay, so
Don't look at me.
The Decades of Horror, the classic era, is partnering with the Classic Sci-Fi Movie Channel. So it's a streaming platform you can get on. I don't have my list here, but for example, Roku and Fire Stick and
Apple TV,
or just on your computer, or even a phone or tablet. But it's got some good stuff. Now, last night I watched the BBC production of 1984 starring Peter Cushing.
Oh,
which
lucky
is
you.
Wow. Peter Cushing.
I really want to see that.
I was reading
What an
afterwards.
actor.
That's pretty much where he made his chops, where he made his reputation. And if you look at it right after that, boom, 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 it starts getting movies like crazy. But that's an incredible, incredible movie. So,
but if you're a fan of classic horror, sci-fi, our video of the classic era are being shown.
Oh, that was the point, wasn't it?
Yeah. So in other words,
Peter Cushing's great, but we're on the channel.
Yeah.
So they got
if you want to see more Daphne and Chad, but you got to take the bad with the good, there's your chance.
Sorry, Daphne, he didn't mean that.
Yes. My bad. Of course, I meant Daphne.
Yeah. So the classic era's videos that are on YouTube are also being shown on the Sci-Fi or the Classic Sci-Fi Movie Channel under reviews. If you search, you'll get them up. So, we're excited about that, and I don't know what else to say about it, but it's a cool service. And as Chad said, I don't know how many channels the overall company is Play Now Media, and they've got 25, 30.
There's classic sci-fi, classic horror, more modern horror.
Yeah.
They
got found footage stuff, I think, too, don't they?
Oh yeah, POV.
The old movie serials like Batman
Western
serials
stuff for
like
people
that.
like Jeff.
A lot of good, cool stuff.
Michael Steinberg, that runs the company, is I first heard about him listening to the Found Footage podcast that another guy used to do, and his partner quit, and Michael Steinberg joined him, and Michael had started up the Found Footage Critics website, and he's got, it's unbelievable what's on there. Every found footage movie you can think of, and stuff is added, and reviews and scores and things like that. And
it's not very expensive. It's not very expensive to join.
No. Well, for these streaming platforms, yeah.
And
Good.
I think I saw quite a few foreign films on there too. So covering, so it's a wide variety. At least from the titles.
He's adding tons of stuff the other day. He was telling me about, he had the Western Channel, and he added 300 titles plus serials. There's one season of Thriller right now, hosted by Boris Karloff.
Oh, cool.
That I think I'm going to watch. So
great episode.
Another cool thing too, I think most of the movies that we cover on Classic Era, they actually have on the platform, so you can actually watch us review a movie and then watch the movie, or vice versa, watch the movie and then watch us review it on the channel. So it's
cool. Send us angry letters. What was Chad thinking?
Send Jeff angry.
Yeah. Don't
he
be
deals
talking
with it better like that. He deals with anger better than I do.
Don't be talking about censorship. All right, so there's plenty of ways to stay in touch.
You old, get your ball out of my yard, you kid.
So
With your new format and everything. Get out of here.
Follow us on the Gruesome Magazine YouTube channel or on your friendly neighborhood audio app. Subscribe, comment. We love comments. And I didn't pull comments for this episode to read on this episode just because it was sort of a quick change here. So we'll check them out for the next one for the boys from Brazil.
All negative comments we won't air, but we will quietly talk about you behind your back.
Put you on the list.
We don't do that.
You don't? Oh, yeah. Jeff wasn't there. Sorry.
Yeah.
All right. I don't even know.
That's going to get edited out. I know he's going to edit
whatever. Why was there
So
a jump
everybody,
cut at the end?
I'm running this long just for Doc because he usually shoots for an hour, and so we're just bloviating here.
Messing with us.
It's definitely getting edited out. Man.
Catch us again here in 2 weeks for another great horror movie. The 1970s, only decades of horror can do it. Thank you so much, Daphne, for
Yes,
giving us
thank
such
you.
a-
Thank
It was
you.
great.
So much fun.
It was great having you here. Say goodnight, everybody.
What the hell?
What?
Did I tell you my grandkids call me Grandpa Shaky? Did I?
Well,
I'm going
My
to start
fingers
calling you that
twitching.
now.
yeah.
Say goodnight.
Try it
everybody.
again, Grandpa Shaky.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Gruesome Magazine.